Right, all right, all right. Welcome back to the podcast, back to Theory and Theology. Oh man, my throat. Sorry, I need water. I don't think I drank enough water today. Hmm. All right, so I wanted to spoil the movie Arrival. Is it Arrival or Rivals? Either way, it's old. Did it say 2011? I don't think that's right because I saw it in San Diego. I don't know if I even lived in San Diego in 2011 yet. I think I moved down there near 2013 or something. But anyways, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. I want to talk about this movie Arrivals. I don't know if I have too much to say about it because it's a little bit confusing of a movie. I mean, I kind of get it. It's kind of like a mystery thriller ish. It doesn't have a lot of thriller to it, but it's kind of mystery ish. Like, you kind of want to know what's going to happen. So, the movie initially takes a. Well, you see, I don't know. I'm gonna ruin the whole movie. If you haven't seen it and you want to see it before you listen to me ruin this whole thing, probably stop listening now and go watch the movie on Netflix if you haven't seen it yet, and then come back and listen to this. Um, so the movie has, a female main character and a male main character, but the male main character isn't revealed initially. The movie opens with the main woman character. She's a professor. I don't know if it's just like a big high school or It looks like a college campus, but maybe it's a really big high school. But it looks like a college campus. And I guess before that, she's kind of like seeming to be in some kind of dream state where she's got like memories of a daughter in her youth and her daughter getting a little older and developing some form of illness like cancer or something, and then unfortunately not making it. And then it cuts to her. I don't really know the play by play, but either way, it shows that she's a professor. She comes into the class, she's teaching. I don't remember the topic. And then, there's not a lot of people in class. And people in class start getting these messages, on their devices. And one of the students asks, can we please turn on the television? And it cuts to the news where there's these objects that are kind of uh, noticed and being seen. They kind of popped up in different areas of the world, and she's um watching the news with the students, and she goes home. I guess the news is still kind of on, and then she goes into class again the next day, and when she goes into the class the next day, there's like no students there because of what was going on in the world. Um, and so, she goes home. I don't know if she goes home. No, she doesn't go home first. I think some military personnel kind of come to her classroom, and they're like, you still have your top security clearance. We need you to kind of decide to come with us because there's these things that we need some kind of linguists or professional people to kind of like communicate. And she makes this comment, like, because she's kind of almost declining, and she makes this comment, when they're gonna go, they're like, oh, we're gonna go ask this next person, and she's like, oh, is it like this certain professor or whatever, I guess. And she's like, well, do me a favor, ask him for the word, I don't remember, ask him the word, some kind of word in Sanskrit, and um he comes back. I don't know where he meets her again. I think it's either at her house when a helicopter comes to her house and tells her, like, he's there. This main guy is there, the military guy, and he kind of tells her what the other guy said, as his response. And I guess maybe he didn't get chosen, and then she gets chosen. She's like, I need 20 minutes to pack my stuff. And it's like the middle of the night, it's dark, and he's like 10 minutes, we're taking off in 10 minutes, and then, you know, uh, so yeah, she basically goes, and since they're gonna take off in 10 minutes, she's like, okay, and after taking off, they get to the site, and, as they're flying in, she kind of, as they're getting closer, she kind of notices the big thing that's kind of hovering. It looks like half of an egg or something. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. It's like I don't know. I'm not good with naming shapes. I don't know what I would call that. It's like half of an egg, or slice off of a vertical side of an egg. Like, it's round on one side, kind of flat on the other, but kind of rounded overall. Black, large, hovering. And I think they don't even really get to sleep. They ask them if they've eaten anything. They give them some kind of boosters, and then they put on these suits and send them into this thing. And so she meets the other main character there, and they're going up inside this vessel. I don't know what you call it. Um, and it opens from the bottom, but they're able to walk um on one of the sides of it, and they don't really even seem to be struggling. Like, it kind of, somehow they get oriented to it, even though they're technically, it would almost be like walking up the side of a wall technically. They're walking up like that. Um and so they're able to just walk like that. And then, she's trying to communicate. I think she takes like a whiteboard, or a little whiteboard or something, and writes the word human, and describes that, you know, she's human, the other guy's human, or whatever. And then there's like some screen looking thing where these, I guess you call them aliens, they come out, and it looks like a dark octopus or something. Like, I don't even know what you call them, but I think they had 7 legs or something. And they kind of, it almost looked like they put like ink on the screen. And so and it makes like a symbol, and then they go back a couple times like this. I mean, I don't know how many weeks they were there. I want to say, I thought I heard the number 18 weeks or something like that, but I don't really know for sure. But they were rushing because all these other countries have them. China's like freaking out, and they find out eventually China's just playing, I think, mahjong with them, and kind of suspicious and paranoid that these beings have some kind of, you know, evil intentions. Excuse me. As is not uncommon for humans to believe when they interact with anything that's unfamiliar to them, humans included, as we've seen how so many different groups of people have been wiped out by prejudiced, fearful people. They come into their land and they're like, oh, shoot, they're way different than us. Um, Everyone kind of, humans aren't very good with beings that they don't understand. If you have a language barrier, if you have a way that you look kind of barrier, if you look different, skin tone, clothing, food, um, you know, the way you dress, um, the way you talk, then people on it oftentimes, will create some kind of prejudice out of fear. And so you definitely see this in this movie where there are the humans that are kind of more open minded than the other ones that are like super suspicious. They're always kind of ready. It's like a military thing. Only military is allowed to engage. But she had her top secret clearance still, so she was still allowed to kind of engage with these types of things. And that's how she got her role. So they're going back and forth, trying to talk to these things, deciphering all these little symbols, and um, it's at a certain point that some of the Americans put like a bomb in there, and you know, the linguist and the other main character. I think the linguist, maybe she goes in. No, her and the other main character guy go in alone without the whole rest of the team after they've like figured out their names and everything. This is like probably the fourth or fifth time they're going in, and they find these um they find these um they don't really know that there's a bomb in there, and they go in, and they're trying to like communicate again. There's some kind of concern about the word weapon. They don't really know if it means weapon or tool or what. And so I guess she figures out that, there's one of 12. There's something about this 12 because there's 12 of them that landed, 12 of these pod things that landed. And, you know, she tries to communicate with them, again, and then it keeps like tapping on the screen, on that screen, like tapping on it. I kind of assumed it was tapping on it to kind of tell her like turn around, turn around. But I think she thought it wanted her to like put her hand on the both of her hands on the screen, which she did, and then the countdown was going, and it I mean, there's a camera in there capturing all of their activity with these beings, and you know, it kind of just spouts out all this like all these symbols, and it takes all these symbols and just like throws them, and then as the explosion happens, it kind of pushes her. I want to say it was her and the other guy. It kind of pushes them both out. There's a barrier where like there's like a screen that kind of closes when it pushes them out, and they're kind of just floating there in space, because of the gravity thing. But they're still inside this pod, but they're protected from the blast. And then they eventually get out, and there's kind of these rumors that, like, okay, now we're gonna call them dangerous. They tried to hurt you, and it's like, no, it was protecting us from the blast. But I don't think she realized that there was a bomb in there because she was taking a while. She didn't seem like she noticed that it was like counting down at all, and it noticed, and so I think it was trying to warn her. She comes back in again. I mean, after that point, the what do you call it? The pods kind of rise up a little bit higher, well, a lot higher off of the ground, to a point where that lift, the human's lift can't really reach it anymore. So she goes to try to go up there, and it takes her alone in this little pod that it brings down and sucks her in there. And it takes her to the other side of the screen, so she gets to see these beings in their full height and everything, um, without her protective clothing on or anything. And it keeps telling her to, like, use the weapon, use weapon, and I guess somewhere along the line, I guess she kind of realized that she can kind of tell the future. Um, and this is toward like the end of the movie. Like, she's having like these weird dreams and weird thoughts and memories about this daughter and all this stuff for like a really long time. And there's some kind of ball or important meeting or something of dignitaries or whoever it is where she's at, later on, once these pods kind of like leave after that last interaction with her. um and it basically flies they fly away, and then she basically, um once they fly away, um it's kind of, it just gets really weird for at the very end after they leave. Like, it's already a weird movie, but it's even weirder once they leave. The very ending to me is really confusing. I've seen this movie before. I saw it in theaters in San Diego, and then I saw it, I guess, this time. I can't remember if I've seen it one other time before this time. I feel like I've seen it another time too, but maybe not. Um, and so yeah, it kind of goes up into, I don't know where it goes. Um, like, they disappear. They kind of disintegrate. They kind of turn on, like, so that the flat side is facing Earth, and then the rounded side is like faced up. They kind of rotate like that, and then they just kind of go up a little higher and just disintegrate. And then everything after that point is really confusing. So when they're at this meeting of the dignitaries, the Chinese leader comes up and talks to her, saying, you told me, you told me my wife's words, my wife's dying words, or wife's last words. Um, Actually, now I think I just barely understood what that means. Um, because that was her weapon. She could see the future. And so it kind of flashes back to the time after she comes out of that pod, when they're all cleaning up, the whole base and everything. They're about to leave and just like leave the area. And so, they have all these tents and like tables and phones and, computer gear and everything. And they're like quickly packing up and they're like, we're going to leave. And so, they're trying to just get everything. And she finds a phone, like a Blackberry or some kind of phone. And she calls the Chinese dignitary. This is like what happened before that ball kind of event. Um, she basically calls him and she's like frantically like running away. They're like, you know, when everyone's cleaning everything up and closing and like rushing around and stuff, they're like, one person sees on the computer that one of the phones is being used, and one of the other leaders is like, well, which phone is being used? And they're like, it's yours, sir. And then somebody brings out some weapons and is like trying to like find the person with that phone who's calling out to, I guess it mentions that it's calling out to China or something like that. It's on the line with China, and she's the one who's calling China, and she's speaking the language, and she's like saying, I don't know what she's saying, but I probably should have put on subtitles, but she's mentioning all this stuff in Chinese over the phone. And then I don't know why, but now I'm kind of thinking like she knows it's gonna be that Chinese dignitary's wife's last words, and so she says that to him, and I guess he trusts her and doesn't start a war with these things or whatever. I don't remember what, like, I guess at that point, I don't know if that was the point where he was going to start the war or not, but maybe it was, because it flashed back to that and then back to her and him talking at this dignitary event, this formal event. And yeah, and then you find out that her and the main character end up kind of having this daughter together, which had some kind of illness or cancer or something, and then didn't make it to a very old age. So they got together, I guess. But there's all these things that keep flashing back and forth between the daughter and the paintings. Like, there's a lot of it where you kind of assume that the main character, that's her when she was a kid. That's her when she was young. That's what you kind of assume. That all these flashes back to like this little girl, or like her when she's a baby, or her when she's like 5 or something like that. But she's having dreams or memories or daydreams of the future daughter that she's going to have. Um, and she doesn't even know this. And the guy that she met, they ended up getting together, and that was the child's dad. And so, um, I don't know if at one point she mentions that she had been married before. Um, I really don't know. It's really confusing. I feel like I'm gonna have to watch it again. It's my mom's birthday coming up this weekend, so I'm gonna see if she wants to watch it again. Like, I don't know if she's seen it yet, but I'll see if she wants to watch it, and I'll watch it again if she wants to see it. But weird movie. um, I don't know what I think. The only thing that really popped out to me was like the whole prejudice thing. Like, here go the humans again trying to kill everything. I mean, I think it is instinctual to some extent, but it's like, I think with humans it kind of might work in our favor better to kind of try to develop understanding fast versus like always assume threat. Um, I mean, I get it. Sometimes we don't have time to like think. It's like, well, if you really want to spend that much time thinking, you might not live if somebody really does have bad intentions. But a lot of times too, it's like we are so limited by language barriers. It's like, you know, like it really keeps people apart. And really it is, language that's super powerful. Like, imagine, you know, the role of a person who knows the language especially when everyone around doesn't know the language. That's a powerful role. Um, and yeah, I just wonder about it. I'm like, okay, like that's an interesting thing. I don't really know what I think past that, but entertaining movie, interesting movie. I haven't really seen a lot of movies like that are like alien movies, but it's not like a war movie. Because usually there's like some kind of battle where like everyone's gonna be shooting. I mean, I think there was a point where they were shooting, but I mean, the aliens were never really like aggressive. It was the humans, and the aliens. At least one of them got killed, or it said the translation was that it's in the death process, but um, because of that blast that they left of that bomb that went off inside of that pod. But um, I guess they were there for her to use her. I don't really understand the whole purpose because I guess at the end she writes this book and it's to her daughter and it has one of the symbols of that language, and I guess it cuts to her in the future kind of like teaching this language. um and I don't know if that's her weapon, that she teaches the language or that she can tell the future. um but it seems like they were kind of in contact with her for some reason. I don't really know what reason that may be, but um it seemed like, I mean, I don't know why there would be 12 of them there and then having all this contact with all these military people and dignitaries and stuff. Um, I don't know if there were any other. They didn't really describe like in Australia, China, like other countries like Russia. I think there were two of them in Russia or something. I don't think they really described like what exactly the other countries were doing, because there was a point where they all cut off communication and they're like, we are going to keep this kind of private to our own country and not leak this out, because they felt like there would be, a national security risk for themselves if they're sharing this information with other countries that might use that information against them. Like it might give them a leg up, or, so there was this kind of like, they don't really want to work together. And I think someone mentioned that, I think she mentioned, the main character lady, that there was some kind of reason, maybe when it mentioned that part about the 12, um, that maybe it's trying to make it so that humans will communicate amongst each other finally. Um, and maybe that's what they did. Like, she's the one who was active in that process of humans communicating with one another more, and wrote that book and was teaching about that experience, lecturing and stuff. So I don't know. Weird movie. Interesting stuff. Um, I like talking about movies that kind of have these like esoteric kind of aspects to them. As you guys can tell, I watch a lot of movies. I do find myself rewatching movies though. It's hard for me to really get into like some of the newer ones, but I do find myself rewatching movies. I did watch a kind of newer movie the other day, but I don't really know what I think about it yet. Um, it was a movie with what was it? There was some kind of weather problem. It was kind of like a dark comedy. I guess the trailer has them in like a station wagon, kind of floating down a river or something, and you're kind of just wondering like, how did they get there? Like, what's going on? Um, and so yeah, I don't want to spoil it more than that, but yeah, I just watched that the other day. I didn't really know what to make of it, but I try to think about the movies I watch and be like, huh, like, is there like a message? Like, some of it's just like, explosions and Vin Diesel in a car and driving around. Some movies are just like, okay, there's really no depth to it sometimes. And then a lot of movies usually have some kind of message. I find myself getting kind of lost in the message at the end a lot of times. I kind of realize I'm like, I don't really know where they were going with this. But I've noticed I have that problem with Japanese movies and anime series too. It's like whenever they get to like the main part of the mystery and then they're gonna explain it, and it's always this like esoteric, like poetic interpretation of like something where I'm like, what the heck are they even talking about? Like, you know, it's like what? Like, can we just talk normally and not talk so poetically that it's just too difficult to really determine what they really mean? But that's about all I've got to say about that for now. And with that, thanks for listening.